The alarm blared through the command deck of the Resilient, causing Captain Daniel Grainger to snap awake from his momentary lapse in concentration. 3 days without sleep would do that to a person, even one as stubborn as him. The flashing red lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow as his small crew scrambled to their stations. "Report," Daniel barked, wiping a hand across his bloodshot eyes. Lieutenant Olivia Chen's fingers flew across her console. "Sir, the alien vessel has locked weapons on us. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a being that looked like someone had taken parts from an octopus, a praying mantis, and something Daniel couldn't even name, then assembled them into a vaguely humanoid shape. Its outer shell gleamed with a metallic blue sheen under the lights of what appeared to be their command center. "Human vessel," the translation software rendered the alien's clicking speech into a flat, mechanical voice. "I am High Commander Vrexus of the Thalaxian Empire. Your resistance has been noted and deemed futile. You have destroyed 3 of our pursuit craft and damaged 1 of our battle cruisers. This defiance ends now. Surrender your vessel and all research data immediately." Daniel ran a hand through his dark hair and leaned forward in his captain's chair. The Resilient wasn't much a retrofitted science vessel with some hastily added military tech, but it was all that stood between Earth and the coordinates for their home system. "Commander Chen, what's our status?" he asked quietly, shields at 23%. "One engine functioning at 60% capacity. Weapons systems operational but low on power. We've got maybe 2 more jumps in us before the drive fails completely." Daniel nodded, then turned back to the screen. "High Commander Vrexus, this is Captain Daniel Grainger of the Earth science vessel Resilient. I appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid I must decline." The alien's appendages rippled in what the translation software tagged as agitation. "You are surrounded by 4 warships, each capable of reducing your vessel to atoms. Your situation is hopeless. Surrender now or be destroyed." Daniel laughed, a genuine laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside him, fueled by exhaustion and the absurdity of their situation. "I don't even surrender to myself, Vrexus. Why would I surrender to you?" The alien's posture changed, and the translation software struggled to categorize the reaction. "Explain this statement. It does not compute." "It means," Daniel said, rising from his chair, "that giving up isn't in my nature, not even when my own body tells me to rest, not even when logic says the fight is over." He gestured to his ragged crew. "None of us surrender. It's a human thing you wouldn't understand. Your species' stubbornness is illogical and will lead to your destruction," Vrexus stated. "You have 10 of your Earth minutes to reconsider, then we attack." The screen went dark. "Captain," said Lieutenant Wade from Tactical, "that was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." "Probably both," Daniel admitted, collapsing back into his chair. "Okay, people, we've got 10 minutes to figure out how to survive this. I'm open to ideas." Engineer Mira Rodriguez stood up from her station. "Sir, I might have something. It's risky, though." "At this point, I'll take risky over certain death. The alien ships are using a quantum field to track us through space. That's how they've been following us through our jumps, but I've been analyzing their field generation and there's a pattern to it." Daniel leaned forward. And I think we can create a feedback loop that would temporarily disrupt their tracking systems. If we time it right with our next jump, we might be able to disappear long enough to reach the Arcturus station." "How long would it take to set up, with help from Wade and Chen?" 8 minutes. Daniel nodded decisively. "Do it. Wade, give them whatever assistance they need. Dr. Franklin, prepare the research data for emergency transmission to Earth if this goes sideways." As his crew rushed to implement Rodriguez's plan, Daniel stared at the tactical display showing the 4 massive Thalaxian vessels surrounding his small ship. The aliens had been pursuing them ever since the Resilient had stumbled upon one of their outposts 3 weeks ago. What was supposed to be a routine survey mission had turned into a desperate flight across uncharted space. The Thalaxians wanted the star charts and coordinates to Earth that were stored in the Resilient's computers. Daniel had already destroyed the primary navigation data, but the aliens didn't know that. They were determined to find Earth, and from what little the crew had learned about the Thalaxian Empire, first contact would not be peaceful. "Captain, Doctor." Franklin called from his station. "I've prepared a data packet with everything we've learned about the Thalaxians. It's ready for burst transmission to Arcturus Station." "Good work. How's that disruption coming, Rodriguez?" "Almost there, sir, but there's a complication. Someone will need to stay behind in the shuttle bay to manually trigger the quantum pulse. The timing has to be precise, exactly 2 seconds before the jump drive activates." Daniel nodded. "I'll do it." "Sir," Chen protested, "that's a suicide mission. Whoever stays won't be able to make it back to the bridge before the jump." "I'm aware of that, Lieutenant. That's why I'll use the shuttle. Once I trigger the pulse, I'll launch and try to rendezvous with you at Arcturus." "The odds of that working are better than the odds of all of us dying here," Daniel cut her off. "Decision made. Get back to work." The minutes ticked by as Rodriguez and Wade installed the quantum pulse device in the shuttle bay. Daniel reviewed the procedure with them twice, making sure he understood exactly what needed to happen. "1 minute until their deadline, Captain," Chen reported. "Open a channel." The screen flickered to life again, showing Vrexus. "Your time has expired, human," the alien commander stated. "What is your decision?" Daniel smiled. "I told you, Vrexus, I don't surrender. Not to my enemies, not to impossible odds, and certainly not to myself when every fiber of my being says to give up. It's not stubbornness, it's hope, something your empire seems to have forgotten." "Then you will die for nothing. Maybe, or maybe we'll see each other again." "Rodriguez, status?" "Ready, Captain," Daniel nodded. "Vrexus, here's a human saying for you to ponder. It's not over until it's over." He cut the transmission. Chen set coordinates for Arcturus Station. "Wade, be ready to divert all power to the jump drive on my mark. I'm heading to the shuttle bay." Daniel sprinted through the corridors of the Resilient, adrenaline pushing back the exhaustion that had been haunting him for days. When he reached the shuttle bay, Rodriguez was waiting with the quantum pulse device. "It's set up on that console," she explained, pointing to a jury-rigged assembly of components. "When the counter reaches 0, press the activation key. Then you'll have exactly 2 seconds to get to the shuttle and launch." "Simple enough," Daniel said, clapping her on the shoulder. "Get back to the bridge and Rodriguez." "Thank you." After she left, Daniel moved to the console and opened a channel to the bridge. "This is the captain." "Start the countdown." "Aye, sir," Chen's voice came through. "Jump sequence initiating, counting down from 30 seconds. Mark." The deck beneath Daniel's feet vibrated as the jump drive began to power up. On the small monitor beside the quantum device, he could see the Thalaxian ships moving into attack formation. 20 seconds. Daniel took a deep breath. Despite everything, he felt oddly calm. This was what he'd signed up for when he joined the Earth Space Initiative, exploring the unknown, facing the dangers of deep space. The fact that it might end here in a desperate gambit against an alien empire seemed almost fitting. 10 seconds. His hand hovered over the activation key. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Daniel pressed the key. The device hummed to life, emitting a high-pitched whine as it generated the quantum feedback pulse. He turned and sprinted toward the waiting shuttle, diving through the hatch as the countdown reached 0. The shuttle's systems were already in pre-launch mode. Daniel slammed his hand on the launch control, and the small craft shot out of the bay just as the Resilient began to shimmer with the energy of the jump drive. Through the viewport, he saw the quantum pulse expand outward, washing over the Thalaxian ships. Their weapons' fire, which had just begun to streak toward the Resilient, wavered and dispersed as their targeting systems went haywire. Then the Resilient vanished in a flash of light, a successful jump. Daniel had barely a moment to feel relief before alarms blared throughout his shuttle. The quantum pulse had affected his systems too, and the shuttle was losing power fast. Worse, one of the Thalaxian ships had managed to get off a shot that clipped his vessel, sending it spinning. "Computer damage report," he gasped, fighting with the controls. Hull breach in aft section, life support compromised, engine control offline, power reserves at 40% and falling. Not good. The shuttle was designed for short-range operations, not interstellar travel. Without the engines, he couldn't follow the Resilient to Arcturus. He was stranded. As the shuttle's spin stabilized, Daniel got his first good look at the situation outside. The Thalaxian ships were in disarray, their systems clearly affected by the quantum pulse. But they were recovering quickly, and soon they'd realize that the shuttle had been left behind. He had minutes at most before they came for him. Working quickly, Daniel accessed the shuttle's emergency beacon. If he could send a message to the Resilient, at least they would know what happened. He recorded a brief update, explaining that the plan had worked, but his shuttle was damaged. He set the beacon to transmit on an encrypted frequency that only Earth vessels would recognize, then turned his attention to more immediate concerns. The shuttle had a small armory standard equipment for away missions. Daniel retrieved a pulse rifle and checked its charge, full. He also found a sidearm and some emergency rations. Not that they would help much against a Thalaxian warship, but he refused to go down without a fight. The communication system crackled to life. "Human shuttle, this is High Commander Vrexus. Your primary vessel has escaped, but you have not. Surrender now, and I will grant you the mercy of a quick death." Daniel laughed again, the sound harsh in the confines of the damaged shuttle. "High Commander, we've been through this. I don't surrender. Your defiance is pointless. You are alone in a damaged craft with nowhere to go. Even by human standards, this is foolish." "Maybe," Daniel admitted, "but here's the thing about humans, Vrexus. We're at our best when things look worst. It's when we get creative." Even as he spoke, Daniel was working on the shuttle's remaining systems. The engines were offline, but the maneuvering thrusters still had power. Not enough to escape, but enough to possibly cause some trouble. "I have dispatched a recovery vessel to collect you," Vrexus informed him. "If you attempt to resist, we will simply destroy your shuttle." "Why not destroy me now?" Daniel asked, genuinely curious. "Why bother taking me prisoner?" There was a pause before Vrexus replied. "Your species' navigation data was not found on your vessel's computers. We believe you may have it stored elsewhere, perhaps in a neural implant or encoded in some way we have not detected." So they still thought he had Earth's coordinates. That was good. It meant the Resilience ruse had worked. The Thalaxians didn't realize that the data had been destroyed. "Well then," Daniel said, "I guess you'll just have to catch me first." He cut the communication and turned his full attention to the shuttle's controls. The recovery vessel Vrexus mentioned was approaching a sleek, predatory-looking craft about 3 times the size of his shuttle. Its hull bristled with what were clearly capture mechanisms rather than weapons. Daniel waited until it was close, then fired all the maneuvering thrusters at once, sending the shuttle into a wild, unpredictable tumble. The recovery vessel tried to match his movements, extending mechanical arms to grab the shuttle. At the last possible moment, Daniel vented the shuttle's atmosphere, using the explosive decompression to alter his trajectory. The recovery vessel missed its grab, one of its mechanical arms scraping along the shuttle's hull with a screech that vibrated through the frame. Now in vacuum, Daniel pulled on the emergency spacesuit that was stored under his seat. It wasn't designed for extended use, but it would keep him alive for a few hours. He continued to play cat and mouse with the recovery vessel, using every trick he could think of to avoid capture. But his options were dwindling along with the shuttle's power reserves. The maneuvering thrusters were nearly depleted, and the recovery vessel was getting better at anticipating his moves. Then he spotted something on the long-range sensors and asteroid field at the edge of the system. If he could reach it, he might be able to lose his pursuers among the rocks. Daniel directed the last of the thruster power toward the field, accelerating as much as the damaged shuttle could manage. The recovery vessel followed, clearly confident that it would catch him before he reached the asteroids. It was going to be close. Daniel watched the distance counter tick down, acutely aware of the recovery vessel closing in behind him. Just as he entered the outer boundary of the asteroid field, the enemy ship fired a tractor beam, catching the shuttle's rear section. The sudden deceleration slammed Daniel against his restraints, knocking the wind out of him. Alarms blared as the shuttle's structure groaned under the opposing forces. "Not today," Daniel muttered, reaching for the emergency controls. He initiated a manual separation of the shuttle's cabin from its engine section. With a series of explosive bolts, the cabin broke free, leaving the engine section in the grasp of the tractor beam. The cabin module, with Daniel inside, shot forward into the asteroid field, its momentum carrying it deeper among the tumbling rocks. Behind him, the recovery vessel was forced to release the engine section and navigate carefully into the field, its larger size making it more vulnerable to collisions. Daniel had bought himself some time, but his situation was still dire. The cabin module had minimal power and no propulsion system. His space suit had maybe 4 hours of air, and he was floating in an asteroid field with hostile aliens searching for him. He didn't even have the option of a heroic last stand anymore. The pulse rifle he'd grabbed earlier was in the section of the shuttle now in Thalaxian hands. But surrender. That wasn't an option either. As the cabin module drifted deeper into the asteroid field, Daniel checked the emergency beacon. It was still transmitting, though he had no way of knowing if the Resilient had received his message. His best hope was to find a suitable asteroid, one large enough to provide some protection from sensors, and try to extend his life support as long as possible. After about 20 minutes of drifting, the module scraped against a medium-sized asteroid that was rotating slowly. Using the last bit of power in the maneuvering system, Daniel managed to secure the module to the rocky surface. Now all he could do was wait either for rescue or for the Thalaxians to find him. He powered down everything except the most essential life support and the emergency beacon, trying to minimize his energy signature. Hours passed. Daniel drifted in and out of sleep, the exhaustion of the past days finally catching up to him. Each time he woke, he checked his suit's oxygen levels and the scanner for any sign of the recovery vessel. So far, nothing. After what his suit's chronometer told him was almost 5 hours, the silence was broken by a faint signal on the emergency channel. "Captain Grainger, do you copy? This is Rescue Shuttle Alpha from Arcturus Station. We've picked up your beacon. Please respond." Daniel scrambled to activate the transmitter. "This is Grainger. I'm here. Be advised, there are hostile Thalaxian vessels in the area." "We know, Captain." The Resilient made it to Arcturus and briefed us on the situation. "We're approaching under stealth with a military escort. Send us your exact coordinates." Relief washed over Daniel as he transmitted his position. Help was coming. Somehow, against all odds, his crazy plan had worked. But his relief was short-lived. The scanner pinged, showing the recovery vessel moving in his direction. They'd found him. "Alpha, be advised, hostiles have located me. ETA to my position approximately 3 minutes. "Copy that, Captain. We're still 15 minutes out. Can you evade?" Daniel looked at his situation. The cabin module was secured to the asteroid with no way to detach it quickly. His space suit had less than 30 minutes of air remaining. "Negative, Alpha. I'm fixed to an asteroid with limited mobility, suit oxygen at critical levels." There was a pause before the rescue shuttle responded. "Understood, Captain. Hold position. We'll get there as fast as we can." Daniel watched the scanner as the recovery vessel approached. It was moving cautiously, probably wary of a trap. That caution might buy him a few extra minutes, but not enough. He considered his options. He could stay with the module and hope the rescue team arrived before the Thalaxians, but that was unlikely. He could try to hide on the asteroid, but in a space suit with limited air, he wouldn't last long. Or he could do something completely unexpected. Daniel checked his suit's thruster pack. It was a basic model designed for short maneuvers in 0G, not sustained flight. But it had enough fuel for one good push. He detached himself from the module's restraints and moved to the airlock. After cycling through, he stood on the surface of the asteroid, looking out at the stars and the approaching Thalaxian vessel. It was close enough now that he could make out details of its design: the blue-black hull, the strange organic-looking protrusions that might be sensors or weapons. Daniel oriented himself toward a nearby cluster of larger asteroids, ones that would provide better cover. Then he fired the thruster pack, launching himself away from his temporary refuge. The sensation of flying through open space with nothing but a thin suit between him and the vacuum was both terrifying and exhilarating. Daniel guided himself toward his target, trying to keep the bulk of the asteroids between him and the recovery vessel. He landed roughly on a large asteroid, the impact sending a jolt of pain through his leg. But he managed to secure himself to the surface using the magnetic grips in his gloves and boots. From his new position, he could see the recovery vessel hovering near the cabin module. Mechanical arms extended from the ship, grabbing the module and pulling it inside. They thought he was still in there. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. It wouldn't take them long to realize he was gone, but it might buy him enough time for the rescue team to arrive. His oxygen indicator blinked red. 20 minutes left. He needed to conserve air. Daniel slowed his breathing, focusing on taking shallow, measured breaths. Each minute that passed was a minute closer to rescue or to suffocation. The recovery vessel finished retrieving the cabin module and began to scan the surrounding area. They knew he had escaped. Daniel pressed himself closer to the asteroid, trying to use its mineral composition to mask his suit's signature: 15 minutes of oxygen. The recovery vessel was moving in a search pattern, methodically checking each nearby asteroid. It was only a matter of time before they found him: 10 minutes. The vessel was closer now, its scanners sweeping over the asteroid field with increasing intensity: 5 minutes. Daniel's vision began to blur slightly, the first sign of oxygen deprivation. The recovery vessel was now checking the cluster of asteroids where he was hiding. He could see its mechanical arms extending, ready to grab him when he was found: 3 minutes. Daniel's limbs felt heavy and a headache pounded behind his eyes. The recovery vessel moved to his asteroid, hovering just 100 meters away: 1 minute. The vessel's searchlight swept over him, illuminating his figure against the dark rock. He was found. As the mechanical arms reached for him, Daniel's oxygen alarm began to blare in his helmet. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. Then, suddenly, the recovery vessel jerked to one side, struck by weapons fire from somewhere outside his field of view. More shots followed, and the Thalaxian ship retreated, abandoning its attempt to capture him. Daniel's consciousness was fading when he felt strong hands grab him. Through blurry eyes, he saw a human rescue team in Earth Space Initiative uniforms. They were attaching an emergency oxygen supply to his suit, their movements quick and practiced. "We've got you, Captain," a voice said in his helmet. "Just hold on." As fresh oxygen flooded his suit, Daniel's mind cleared enough for him to speak. "The Thalaxians. Our military escort is keeping them busy," the rescue leader assured him. "Let's get you out of here." They guided him to their shuttle, a sleek craft with Earth Space Initiative markings. Once inside, the medical officer helped remove his helmet and began checking his vital signs. "You're suffering from oxygen deprivation and exhaustion," she informed him, "but you'll be fine with rest and proper treatment." Daniel nodded weakly as they secured him to a medical couch. Through the shuttle's viewport, he could see flashes of weapons fire as Earth vessels engaged the Thalaxian ships. "The Resilient," he began. "Safe at Arcturus Station," the pilot called back. "Your crew told us what happened. That was quite a stunt you pulled, Captain. Did it work?" "The quantum pulse." "It did more than work," the medical officer said with a grin. "It scrambled their tracking system so badly that they lost all trace of the jump signature. The Resilient made it to Arcturus without any pursuit. And the data you gathered on the Thalaxians has already been sent to Earth Command. They're preparing defenses in case these aliens find their way to our system." Relief washed over Daniel. It had been worth it. His crew was safe, and Earth had been warned. The shuttle shuddered as it accelerated away from the asteroid field, escorted by 2 military vessels that kept the remaining Thalaxian ships at bay. What about Vrexus? Daniel asked, remembering the alien commander. His flagship retreated when our forces arrived, the pilot explained. Seems like they weren't prepared for a real fight. Daniel leaned back on the medical couch, letting exhaustion take over now that he was safe. They'll be back, he murmured. They still want Earth's coordinates. Let them come, the rescue leader said confidently. We'll be ready. And if they're all as stubborn as you, we might actually have something to worry about. Daniel managed a tired smile, not stubborn, just unwilling to surrender. Even to yourself, the medical officer asked, clearly having heard about his exchange with Vrexus. Especially to myself, Daniel confirmed. That's the hardest battle to win. As the shuttle jumped to light speed, heading for Arcturus Station, Daniel finally allowed himself to rest. The fight wasn't over. He knew the Thalaxian Empire wouldn't give up easily. But for now, his refusal to surrender had paid off. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood on the observation deck of Arcturus Station, watching as technicians applied the final touches to the Resilient's repaired hull. His crew had welcomed him back with cheers and relief when the rescue shuttle had arrived, though Chen had lectured him thoroughly about taking unnecessary risks. Earth Command had debriefed him extensively about the Thalaxians, and preparations were underway throughout human space to defend against a possible invasion. The quantum pulse technology that Rodriguez had developed was being adapted for larger vessels, potentially giving Earth ships a critical advantage. Captain, a voice called from behind him. Daniel turned to see Admiral Keaton approaching. Good to see you up and about. Thank you, Admiral. The doctors finally cleared me for duty yesterday. Just in time, Keaton said, handing him a data pad. These are your new orders. Earth Command is forming a task force to establish a defensive perimeter along our border with Thalaxian space. The Resilient will be part of that force with some upgrades to her weapons and shields. Daniel skimmed the orders, nodding. When do we leave? 3 days. Your crew is already preparing. Keaton studied him for a moment. I've read all the reports about what happened out there, Grainger. Most captains would have surrendered in your position. Daniel looked back at the Resilient, remembering the moment when he'd made his decision. With respect, Admiral, surrender wasn't an option, not when Earth's location was at stake. Even so, your actions were extraordinary. Some might even say reckless. Maybe, Daniel admitted, but there's something about facing impossible odds that brings out the best in humans. We don't give up easily. No, we don't, Keaton agreed, which is why I'm confident this task force will succeed. The Thalaxians may be technologically advanced, but they don't understand what they're up against. They'll learn, Daniel said, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, Vrexus and his fleet were still searching for Earth's coordinates. The next encounter would be even more dangerous, but Daniel wasn't worried. His refusal to surrender to the aliens, to the odds, to his own limitations had saved his crew and potentially Earth itself. It was a lesson the Thalaxian Empire would have to learn the hard way. Humans were at their most dangerous when cornered. As he returned to the Resilient to prepare for their new mission, Daniel couldn't help but smile at the thought of facing Vrexus again. The aliens still didn't understand what he'd meant about not surrendering to himself. Maybe next time he'd explain it better, or maybe he'd just show him.